Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Truth Defender podcast. We are coming to you from the greatest country in the world, the great state of Texas, deep in the heart of the Lone Star State, Dallas, Texas, more specifically. We really appreciate you guys stopping in for another episode. If you guys aren't already a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button for us, as well as that like button. And also, don't forget to hit that bell icon so you guys don't miss an episode in the future, whether we go live or put out another episode of our High Strangeness series. If you guys are on the go and you want to check us out, you can find us at Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio and Amazon Music at Truth Defender Podcast. If you love what we do here on the show, please consider sharing the link with a friend, family member, or colleague. Just take it easy with people at work because they might not understand or be as forgiving as we are here. If you guys have any questions for myself or our guests, as well as guest or topic recommendations, you can shoot us an email at thetruthDefender1776 at gmail.com. So we're jumping back into things this week. I have been out of action for the entire week. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I've been sick. I sound like crap. I feel a little better than I did at the beginning of the week, but we're going to be kind of pushing through it. I feel like I just ran a marathon. I'm sweating and I'm out of breath. It's been kind of rough. So I'll be kind of freaking gasping for air here quite often. So I'll try to keep my involvement in this a little limited and let Jason run wild. But yeah, as you guys can tell, we have Mr. Jason McLean back on from sirupapers.com, as well as Jason McLean Questions Everything. You can find him and everyone else's work over at Texas Front Porch on YouTube as well. But we'll let him kind of run through the schedule and the gauntlet of shows that they have up every week. So that way you guys can get a better understanding of what's going on over there. So without further ado, Mr. Jason McLean. How you doing, Mr. Sir?
So far, so good. I get to run amok. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was telling because as soon as I was doing that intro, I started like getting tired, and I was like, oh man, what the heck?
I get it, man. I was sick on Monday, man. I get it. Two things I always recommend: acetacoximum. They come in these little things, like these little capsules, and they cut, and they're like little pellets. So you just put them under your tongue, and vitamin, like Airborne. It's a vitamin C supplement, but it's designed for fighting off like flus and stuff. It, again, knocks all that right out.
I have to get me a freaking bottle of tequila or something
There
tomorrow. Take a shot or something, because yeah, as soon as I was like halfway through that intro, I was like, I was like tired, and I was like, I can't breathe. So, that was rough.
I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, but yeah, that's been kind of rough this week. But so like I guess the topic for today, we're gonna be kind of we're gonna be discussing weather manipulation and whether it's used as weapons against countries for whatever reason. Obviously, the main one that everybody kind of thinks to as soon as you say or mention anything kind of related would be HARP.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the bigger one. I was kind of in the same boat as you as well. I don't think HARP was directly used for that kind of stuff, but obviously technology similar or that came from there would probably be involved in some form or another. But I mean, so I guess kind of let me know or let everybody else know kind of what you like your main reaction to that whole topic would be. Like, do you think that governments actually use weather as a weapon in that way?
I mean, my general take on it is, again, I never say no to anything unless I am for certain, like I was there, I have direct line of, knowledge, that kind of thing. So I never say no. I believe that not just ours, but other governments are trying to actively manipulate the weather. Absolutely. Like, that's not even a question. Do I think they've been successful in militarizing it to the degree that people in this field sort of talk about? No, I don't think we are. Like, I don't think they steered Katrina into Louisiana specifically, right? I don't think we've got that kind of weather capabilities. Now, do I hold out the possibility that there could be something that we could nudge a few things here and there and have maybe make some larger changes to weather pattern? That I think we can do. And we may be doing it. let me throw a couple of buzzwords at you. I think the weather as a dynamic system is just too vast, too massive, too complicated, with too many moving parts to manipulate it on a granular sort of aspect, right? Like, I don't think they can say we want rain in this city at this time. I don't think they can move hurricanes or even start more hurricanes necessarily. But if this technology were to actually work, I think it would be something on a larger scale. Like you're like what you're doing is you're tipping something that maybe is already happening, but you may be able to sort of help exacerbate it a little bit. Maybe create a sort of a system that because we tend to think of weather as being a static thing, and it's not. Our planet is vastly complicated. It's like we like the most sophisticated quantum it's not even quantum yet, but the most sophisticated computers that we have on Earth are dedicated to weather pattern recognition. And the best we can and I mean really the best we can do is just tell you like 15 minutes in advance, hey, there's a storm coming, right? Because it's we can do good, like we can do generally pretty good, but it's too dynamic to control on a granular level. But like I said, if there's a weather pattern, maybe a larger sort of theme, maybe we could have some, we could maybe be like, hey, let's exacerbate this thing here, right? Sort of like, uh, you know, if you're off by a millimeter on your aim when you're shooting, if you shoot at somebody from 20 feet away,
It's
being
big.
off point, yeah, it's not a big deal. But if you're shooting at somebody from 100 yards, you've missed them by feet.
Yeah.
And so the weather, because our system is so dynamic, I do think it's possible that maybe that we've developed some technology to kind of maybe tweak a few things that have maybe larger overarching impact.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how far that goes back, but like, I guess the first
Mhm.
time we ever heard of the term coined weapon as weather as a weapon was coined in Vietnam. So
Mhm.
like the United States was like
Yeah.
actively seeding the weather and Operation Popeye to manipulate the rainy season. So they wanted to extend the monsoon seasons so they can have all that,
Yeah.
while they were attacking and stuff like that. So that was kind of like when that whole term was first coined. That's kind of right when you first hear about that possibility happening, like on a wide scale. Obviously, using it in war would be
Right.
like the main reason to have it. I mean, there's been instances throughout history where like the weather benefited one side or the other, and they were able to attack or outlast longer, whatever. So that would obviously be a big help if we were able to have that at a flip of a switch. Obviously, but
Right.
I don't think we're kind of quite there yet that we know of. But I mean, when you talk about like seeding, cloud seeding, so that happens
Mhm.
like in the Middle East all the time. They do that for like
Yes.
months and months at a time, so they could rain. Obviously, in Dubai and all those areas, it hardly ever rains unless they do that. So, um,
Right. And that's a great example. Things like cloud seeding, that is a real thing. In fact, Arlene just mentioned it. You know, the rain wars where you try to exacerbate again, you try to stimulate rain. That is something that's done. China does it. I know for a fact we do it, but I mean, China's publicly talked about it. They have these. So I guess if you want to talk about a granular something on a smaller level to affect rain in a specific given area, yeah, there is cloud seeding technology that exists. It's not exactly, it doesn't have the capabilities that we see in novels, sci-fi things like geostorm. Like I don't, again, something small creating clouds. Yeah, yeah, we have some ability to do something like that, right? But it tends to actually, to Arlene's very valid point here, it does seem the problem is when you do that, you upset a balance, and that is an issue. But I think when we talk about weather manipulating technologies, it's like, okay, yeah, you can make little impacts here. Maybe that does have a larger impact. Again, butterfly effect kind of a thing. Um, and then maybe that has larger impacts than we're giving it credit for, right? But I think when most people think of HARP, to your point, it's doing things like moving hurricanes or creating a heavier season. I don't think we're doing that. But that being said, look at China right now. They're in a massive drought, an unheard of drought. Um, Pakistan there's literally a new massive sea in Pakistan because Pakistan's basically, it's basically a bowl. The essentially this large, massive, habitable area in Pakistan is now completely underwater.
Right.
This is weird. This is why at first when you talked about this, I was like, I'm not really a big fan of even the idea. But at the same time, I'm looking at these and I'm like, you know, that's it's awfully odd to have those. But again, is that us doing it deliberately, or is it? Here's the worst part. What if we can manipulate the weather, but we can't really control what it does? All we're doing is screwing up a dynamic system. And because really HARP hasn't even been active for a while, according to most reports. It hasn't been active in a long time. And that begs the question, what if we just screwed it up? And it's in some of these more extreme weather patterns that we're seeing are a result of our screw up.
Yeah. So I mean, so you talk about screwing it up, and
Mhm.
so like the end of when was it? The end of 2019. So like the UAE, obviously, it's
Mhm.
very hot. It barely ever rains. Now
Yeah.
I have been looking at this for a long time, but they were doing cloud seeding for like years and at a
Yeah.
time. They were going like straight, like every month they would shoot off some new clouds up into the sky and stuff. And it's basically like water particles that they're shooting up into the sky that's supposed to be mixing
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff. It's very scientific. Obviously, I'm a weather doctor, so I understand all of it. But
You're not a weather doctor.
no, no, I am a weather doctor. Yeah, so so
I'm a weather OBGYN. I
yeah,
deliver
so
the rain.
there you go. So, but like in Dubai at the end of 2019, um, there was like torrential downpours and like the
Hmm.
streets were flooded and they were pumping water out of like the malls and stuff because it was just
Yes.
raining nonstop. So
Yeah.
that would be one instance of it like going awry. But you know, you speak of China. So in China controlled Tibet, they have launched a weather controlling machine, whatever that
Hmm.
consists of, in 2018. And that was to modify the weather like in that area because it wasn't raining enough. Now, obviously, it's widespread throughout China, so I don't know if that's continuing to happen. I wouldn't doubt it.
Hmm.
But they said sometime in like December of 2020 um, that they were launching artificial rain enhancement rockets
Yeah.
into the sky, like over Beijing. Um, so I mean, they're shooting something out there. Whether it's controlled, I doubt it because there's not really anything you would be able to control about the weather in that way. They're just kind of shooting stuff into the sky and hoping they catch rain, but there's no like
Yeah.
limitation to it. So it could just keep going and going for all we know.
Well, and that's actually so I was actually reading on this like a couple months ago. They were talking about all the rain that was happening in Japan, and they said, China has been trying to do this, manipulate the weather to give them more rain, and they're experiencing the worst drought that we've ever seen. But it's raining harder than it ever has in Japan. It's like, what if they succeeded, but they succeeded in giving Japan the rain and actually took it from them? To Titan's point, yeah, I mean, HARP was supposed. The theory was it was that HARP used electromagnetic frequencies to manipulate. Again, that's the theory,
Yeah.
to manipulate the ionosphere and perhaps affect things that way. I think the simple fact of the matter is there's there's the stuff that people leak, right? We've talked about this
Mhm.
a lot. Disinformation is a real thing, but and we know weather manipulation is something that is, again, we it's publicly talked about, but it doesn't look like it's very successful, at least not deliberately. In fact, if anything, it looks like it's more of a you're kind of throwing things against the wall to see what sticks, kind of a thing. Because it's again, I go back to this, and I cannot stress this enough, which is also one of the reasons I have problems with the whole global warming. Of course, now it's climate change, but that's a different thing. Our planet is too dynamic to control. Weather is too like people talk about detonating nuclear weapons to break up a hurricane, right? What they and this has been I mean, people have talked about this for decades. This is not something that Trump dreamed up one. It's like, no, people have talked about this. And the simple fact of the matter is, it would be you know what you'd get with if you nuked a hurricane, you would get a radioactive hurricane. Like that's it. That's the most you'd get because people are like, well, think about all of the heat all the energy. An average, I think it was like a category 3 hurricane or even a category 2 hurricane. I'd have to double check this, but essentially it produces the same amount of heat and kinetic energy and friction as a nuclear bomb does every minute. Now, it's vastly dispersed over a much larger yeah, but I mean the amount of actual energy that a hurricane has is unfathomable. And what it's doing it is so far beyond us that it's insane. Weather is too dynamic. It's never there's this whole idea again. I'll talk about it. Why not? Let's piss a bunch of people off.
Yeah.
Climate change is the reason they changed that was to climate change from global warming was a prediction that has failed entirely. It has completely and people are like, what about this? What about what? What about what? They're like, what about hurricanes? This is one of the weakest hurricane seasons we've ever had. There's no evidence at all. The hurricanes are getting either stronger or more prevalent. If anything, they've actually gone down. People are like, but look, it's more expensive when they hit. Well, it's because our dumbasses are building really expensive things where there are hurricanes. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And instead of building things out of something like a monolithic dome, which is my dream, which are these, you don't know what a monolithic dome is a giant, or they're not giant, they can be whatever size you want, but they're concrete domes. They're essentially made of concrete, steel reinforced, and they have a plastic coating that actually reflects the sun. They will withstand a category of an F5. Sorry, they'll withstand a direct hit with an F5. These things are insane. They're basically bomb shelters. You could, if you, again, a little better planning, not that our government's actually good at that, but if we actually planned things, we had a slightly more well thought out infrastructure, wasn't, designed by corrupt people, and started using monolithic domes, you wouldn't have these scenes like in Texas, right? Like a couple of years ago, we had that F5 that went through, I forget the town, it was east of here a bunch of years ago. And like they went down one of these main streets and you could just see the slabs of where the houses used to be.
Yeah.
It was basically clean. It was like someone just took this, it was like a great hand. It just come down and wiped everything off the map.
It was
And
weird. Yeah, it was pretty
yeah.
rough. Even when the hurricanes were when I was still living in Dallas, it was like
Mm-hmm.
going up like Lower Greenville into like University Park where we used to live up there, and it was just going like through the middle of Dallas, like this freaking tornado. You would
Yeah.
drive around like on the other side of town, and it was just like it tore through neighborhoods. It was weird. Like we were sitting at home, like we could hear it like outside, and we're just like kind of wondering if it was gonna roll over us or not. And it was raining like crazy. We used to have these giant trees in the backyard, and they were just like breaking. I was like, "What the heck is going on?" It was wild.
Yeah, but my point is, we could, if we actually, this is the worst part. If we actually wanted to do something, we could make hurricanes essentially very minor issues, but as far as their impact on our society. But the broader point here is climate change. No, climate is dynamic. Is it changing all the time? Yes, but we haven't seen any warming in the last 15 years.
Wasn't it global cooling before?
Yeah, it was global cooling. They were talking about we need to do things to heat everything up. Now we got to do things guys.
Screw you, Al Gore.
Yes, for a lot of reasons. just take a dartboard with a timeline and throw a dart at any time in history. You will find a radically different global mean temperature. That's just it. Really? Oh no, the glaciers will melt, and all of the polar bears will die. Well, let me ask you a question. Did the polar bears evolve over the last 1,000 years? Well, no. They've been around longer than that. Okay, great. Then how in the world do they survive the warming period before the Middle Ages? It was way hotter. You know how I know it was warmer 1,000 years ago? Because every time a friggin' glacier melts, we find evidence of human habitation. where things just got so cold they left. Like we find tools in villages, and they were out there mining and doing things. It's been a lot warmer. It's been a lot colder. Our planet is dynamic. That's the broader point here, which goes back to the hubris of weather control technology to begin with. Like, let's move beyond what are they maybe doing? It's clearly they're doing it and they're screwing things up. You can't control the weather. It's too much. It's too powerful. The best, if we've done anything at all we've managed to do is screw up weather patterns. And I mean, China gets a drought. China gets a drought. I don't know that I care that much, but I do care about the innocent people in China who are hurt, because that drought isn't hurting Xi Jinping.
Nah.
It's not hurting the bureaucrats. It's hurting the people. I do care for the people. Care about the people who are hurt in Pakistan, because that's a tragic thing that's happened. The simple fact of the matter is, any weather manipulation technology is just bound to screw it up for people, and it's too much. Like it doesn't seem to be effective at all. It's only effective at showing that we aren't competent enough to do it, and we should probably stop trying to.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it works too well. We're screwing with stuff that we shouldn't be doing, and they're just like, I got it this time. Like this time I can make it work, and it just keeps going and going. It's just like we just finished getting over COVID, and now they had this whole
Yep.
thing where they created an even stronger version up
Yeah.
there in freaking Boston University, and it's like
Yeah.
we just have to screw with stuff. Like it's just
Like,
like we have
let's
to.
create a version that can't possibly exist in nature, and let's see what happens. Why? Seriously?
Yeah,
You can so Titan had a comment that monolithic domes are made right here in Italy, Texas, and this is true. 15 minutes from my house. That's actually how I know about them. My dad used to take me there all the time to look at them when they first opened. But
Hmm.
like, we've talked to the people who created it, who designed it. I've watched it that company grow and literally my whole life.
Yeah, I have to
So
take a
yeah.
look at them. I never really heard about them until you mentioned that. So
Oh yeah,
maybe
no. Let me know. We'll drive on down there. I'll show. They're interest. It's an interesting technology. Again, when I finally build my forever home, that's on my little plot of land out in the middle of nowhere, so I can be left alone. That's what I'm building it out of.
that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, let's take a look at that. I never really heard of that, so that's
Yeah,
worth a look at.
yeah. Let me know. I'll
Yeah,
take you down.
nice. Yeah, so it's like here's I guess the main reason why this even came up in the first place. So I- I've always had like a sneaking suspicion here and there that it was controlled. Obviously, that they could use weather in
Hmm.
one way or another to make it rain more, maybe to cause droughts or stuff like that.
Hmm.
But so this happened back in 2021.
Hmm.
So right when we had that huge snowstorm here in
Oh yeah,
Texas,
yeah, yeah.
so like
Yes.
it snowed so bad for
Hmm.
everybody, and like we lost power here where I'm at for like 3 days straight. There's like no heat, no hot, and like electricity, so it was pretty rough. We were like had a bunch of candles up, and we were like sleeping in
Yeah.
the bathroom all together because we have a pretty large bathroom. So what we were doing was like closing the doors and making sure the heat wouldn't get out, and like we had like a
Yeah.
mattress in the bathroom. And we were all sleeping in there because it was warm. Um, but like a lot of people died during that time,
Yes. It's terrible.
and there was like 4 million people without power and all that kind of stuff. But there was a lady. She was an actress. I guess she was an actress. I never heard of her. By the name of Kirsten Weldon. I don't know who that is. I've never heard of that name before.
Never heard of her either.
She was doing an interview with somebody, and of course they called her a QAnon conspiracist or whatever. I don't know her. I don't know what like she was talking about or what that whole interview was like on a larger scale. But this, she was referring to the fact, or not to the fact, but she was saying that the Chinese paid the Biden administration to allow them to run weather manipulation experiments on Texas. Now, this, according to her, was the reason why all of that happened. And this is what it says. It says she was referring to the unprecedented snowfall and record breaking cold temperatures that Texans
Hmm.
experienced in February, The winter storms initially left over 4 million Texans without power and heat as the state's electrical grid experienced major failure. Weldon later claimed that the Chinese normally use their weather warfare weapons to pull the hurricane stuff from the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. However, since the observatory was currently closed at the time due to its main telescope being damaged, Weldon said that China launched its weapons from the Ecuadorian High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, which is HARP, facility. HARP facilitates monitor solar radiation located in the ionosphere. So she was saying that the Chinese paid Joe Biden and his staff or whatever all that money so they can run tests on us here. That's what she claimed. I'd never heard of that until I actually read this story.
I hadn't heard that particular one either, but
I don't know who she is or like what her deal is or what's going on, but it said ex actress, so I'm assuming she got some crap for that. But
well, this goes back. So this is again, this is one of those fundamental problems you have with a lot of people who are whistleblowers, right? It's like, okay, why do you have this super secret information?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's why you, right? Like there are like, I see why people could, I mean, okay. We've talked about this before on one of the other shows. L.A. Marzulli, I get why someone would go to him, right? He's big enough. He's a big enough name. I can see people saying, hey, I want someone to tell this story. Now, do I think you should necessarily trust them? No, I think the government does want misinformation, disinformation out there. We've talked about that. But it's like, you're some random person. Now, does that mean that there's no reason for her to know this? No, there probably is. Like, there could be a reason for her to know this. Maybe a family member or a close friend has this connection in that they're passing on to her. But that's sort of my first question is, okay, how do you have this super secret information that nobody else seems to have? So am I calling her a liar? No, I'm not. I'm certainly not. Do I think it's necessarily outside the realm of possibility? Like I said, I never say anything is 100% zero. Right. But again, it's like, okay, this is some random person saying random words. That's about how we can view it. Because let's be honest. I mean, it isn't like weird stuff doesn't happen all the time. Now, is it happening more? Well, that's a question, right? Again, we only really have, if you stop to realize, as far as genuinely good, precise weather readings and measurements, we only have them for less 140, 150 years. I mean, yeah, we've got stuff that goes back to the 1700s, 15, 1600s, but it's people writing, say, hey, this happened on this date. Okay, but we don't know if there was some, year in 1312 when a bunch of, when we had 20 hurricanes slam into Florida and wipe out a bunch of tribes, right? I mean, we just don't know. I mean, we don't know. Maybe the weather got so weird one year that Lake Michigan entirely froze over and caribou were sauntering across. Like, we just don't know. We only really have, I mean, even I'm being generous with the 150-year thing. Really, it's only the last 100 years. And really only since 1975 that we've had really good weather satellites to observe this stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like, it feels like a lot of this is designed. All right, let me get really conspiratorial. I try, really like, all right, something good. None of this logic and rational stuff. Okay. Something I've been thinking about for a while is, and we've talked about this for a long time, and I'm not. I don't think I'm speaking out of my butt on this one when I say this. It feels like a lot of disinformation, what they do is there's a kernel of truth,
right,
but then they throw a lot of this flashy stuff around. So you're busy looking for the flashy stuff, right? But you miss the actual kernel of truth. I don't even want to use the thing I usually use. Let's use UFOs. There's a great documentary called Mirage Men. This is the thing. People have come out and said, look, I'm done with the military. Yeah, we manipulated the UFO community. to get them to say these things we wanted, and because it threw them off of what they were really looking at, because we didn't want them to know what we were actually doing. This is not a hard thing. This is something that happens all the time. Someone goes in, they flash some badge, like I'm with the DOD, or I'm with the CIA, or I'm with NSA, or I'm with, and you create sort of this illusion so that the conspiracy theorists will go off, and they will follow the more dramatic stuff, because that allows them to look for something, and it creates this atmosphere that allows them to hide what they're really doing. Okay. Again, we're having a fun time, and I want to talk about the model I usually use. But the simple fact of the matter is, we've seen this stuff where it's like, here's the truth. Here's this weird conspiracy theory that they promote, and they make certain that you hear it. The moon landing is actually a great version of this, right? Oh, I forget his name. He's on, or at least he used to be on Coast to Coast all the time. But he was a reporter, working during the moon landing. He was one of those cub reporters, like he was brand new. So they actually sent him down to be at Cape Canaveral. Back when you had to wait for someone to call or someone to actually walk in and tell you stuff. So
Right.
he's there, and the vice president and the guy who runs NASA, they come in, and they have this weird looking dude with them. And the guy who runs NASA, he's meeting all the reporters, and he's introducing them to this guy who's handing brochures out, these little pamphlets. And this dude, this random weird looking dude, is claiming the moon landing was faked. Here's how they did it. It's all they did it on a soundstage. The capsule hasn't even returned to Earth yet. And remember, this is the 60s. He didn't just go to a Kinko's, not that those exist anymore. And Xerox off some stuff he made on a typewriter. These had to be printed.
Right.
And then, I mean, this was a lot, like, and so you're like, hold on, how does this guy have a pamphlet already made up, the whole 9 yards? And why in the world is the guy who runs NASA introducing him to all these newscasters or all these news reporters? Like, why would you do that? He forgot about it until like 10 years later. He was walking around California somewhere. I think it was just outside LA. And someone hands him the exact same pamphlet. Not something no, it was the exact same one. And he's like, and that's what got him to think, was like, this is weird. So he started looking into it. It's his theory that the faked moon landing conspiracy theory was created by NASA to hide what they were really doing. So everyone's trying to figure out, well, we didn't go, how did we fake it? They're trying to figure that out. But they're missing sort of a more obvious point, which is that missing 2 minutes.
Right.
And so there's so much like that. Again, okay, I'll just say, because I always talk about it. It's like Pizzagate. Everyone's looking for these super secret tunnels, and they're looking for all the flashy stuff. They miss the obvious, that there's a dude with his own freaking island that everyone goes to. And again, the worst part, and this is sort of my broader thought on conspiracy theories. The thing about most conspiracy theories is, in a way, they're comforting. Kids being trafficked by some multi-billionaire who we don't even know how he got his money. Like, that's something we could probably actually change, because think about it, everyone actually knew. That's the worst part. Everyone knew. They helped cover it up. Politicians, the news media, all of them essentially helped cover that up. But believing that there's some super governmental organization with advanced technology and they're drilling, it's like, well, that's nothing I can stop, right? I can't stop that, but I can talk about it. But the idea that, hold on, you mean this guy right here and all these politicians that we've been voting for are just kind of doing it publicly, they're all in on it? That's Disney's in on it because you're like, well, hold on. That is something I could do something about. Like, I think that's why a lot of conspiracy theories, like, it gives you that sense of, I know more, but also it distracts you from what's really happening. That really happening, that's something you can do something about. That's information you really can choose to make different decisions, right? So again, with like the whole weather changing thing, again, actually, Titan, this is why I love Titan. He knows exactly where my brain is going. To bring it back to HARP, right? What if the whole weather changing thing is the cover? So we're busy looking for, well, did they do this? Did they do this? Instead, what it really is an electromagnetic weapon. It's a new type of weapon that is designed to knock out or distort EMP. Maybe it can create, maybe any weather modification that occurs in a certain area is a side effect, but you ionize a certain area and that creates electrical instability. Boom, you've got a massive lightning storm that just lights up an area.
Yeah.
Or again, you block out someone's, more simple, you block out their communications. You take out satellites in orbit without having to fire a weapon at them.
Yep.
Maybe that may be a big, again, what if the whole weather manipulation thing is actually more of, it's the distraction. It's the sexy assistant to hide what the magician's actually doing. The tricks are always really, really simple. We overthink them, right? Like, how does the guy who made the Statue of Liberty disappear on television, David Copperfield, you know how they did that trick?
Mirrors?
No. It is so freaking stupid and obvious that you will kick yourself. Here's what he does on national television. So he's got a live studio audience, right? And they're there. There are people on benches on this stage. And that's true. He has this thing set up where he can draw a curtain and draw it back, right? And they have a radar. It's the most hokey. It looks like, some prop from some old sci-fi film from the 60s. It's like, here's our radar. It just has a blinking, like, perfect dot where the Statue of Liberty is.
Right.
He draws the curtain. Okay. And it's all one contiguous shot. You have to remember, this is one contiguous shot. The stage, he draws the curtain, says the magic word, and oh no, the light has gone off on the radar, and he draws it back and the Statue of Liberty is gone. Okay, that's what you saw. And everyone's like, oh no, it's gone. Like, the live studio audience is freaking out. Like, oh no, where did it go? And then he draws the curtain back, and then it reappears. He draws, and it's back, and everyone's like, oh, he brought back Lady Liberty. He moved the stage. The whole stage is on a rail system. They just took the stage, they moved it a few feet because of the camera. So when he draws the curtain back, the camera is now looking, instead of here at the Statue of Liberty, it's just right here. And everyone on stage was in on it. They're all actors. We're like, well, look at all those people. Certainly he couldn't have pulled this off in front of a bunch of people. You're right. He couldn't have pulled it off in front of a bunch of people unless they were paid actors. It's the obvious. They just moved the stage a few feet. You don't see it because the camera's on the same stage. Like, how did he go through the Great Wall of China? It's like, how did he move through it? He walked around it. It was a broken part of the wall. Like, he just literally, it's like he goes in here, he just ran around and pops up on the other side of the stage. He didn't go through anything. The camera's designed to point where he just walked around. That's all he did. Again, magic is always really, really stupidly simple. Yep. But you throw the glitz and glamour at it, so you miss the trick. I think a lot of, again, we know the CIA created the word conspiracy theory, or the phrase conspiracy theory, in the 60s to throw people off on Kennedy.
Right.
Like, they perpetuate a lot of these because they know once someone gets a hold of it, they'll run with it. And everyone's busy looking over here again at the sexy weather changing, assistant, and miss the obvious. It's a particle beam weapon. Because here's the thing, the really advanced weapons don't look like Star Trek. That's not what they look like. You don't see the laser beam or the phaser. It doesn't look like a ray gun. It's going to look like something like the HARP setup. It's a bunch of arrays that generate electromagnetics, that particles that allow them to direct where it goes in the atmosphere. It's, oh, hey, look at this really advanced technology. It must be an alien that they're working with. And it's like, no, it's a drone. You just don't know that the technology exists to create that yet. It's a flying wing that you've never seen because no one's ever, because it was in the late stages of development during World War II. We brought it over here. We've been playing with it ever since because we need to understand how it works so we can make 1,000 of them. Making one you can make one of anything.
Yeah.
Making 1,000 of something, that's hard. And you have to understand how and why it works. You have to develop new math, new technology to even build some of this stuff. So a lot of this, the technology itself is so advanced, we wouldn't recognize it for what it is if we saw it. Is it a weather? It's a weather machine. Oh, we're over here. Look at the weather machine. Over here, there's some weird thing that occurs in the upper atmosphere. And we're like, maybe that's something to do with weather. No, we just blew up a satellite. And China's freaking out because we can blow up satellites now without having to send up an anti-satellite weapon that they can block.
Yeah. It's. I was looking at what Titan was saying down there as well. Yeah. So HARP would have been leftover technology from Tesla. I think it was he had a electromagnetic machine that was heating up the ionosphere or something like that. That was like some kind of
that's one of the theories
machine he had or something like that. So I have no doubt that came from him or some form of it. But it's definitely weird. I mean, now that I'm going to kind of go here through a few cases of, I guess, the military trying to do experiments on the weather, and some that are not even of the military, but here's just a few examples. So attempts to modify weather have been made since at least the late 1940s. The U.S. Navy, Army, and Air Force, working with General Electric, made the first attempt to modify a hurricane under Project Cirrus by dropping about 80 pounds of dry ice into the clouds. It's kind of weird. I guess that would maybe work. I don't know.
Well, I mean, 80 pounds doesn't feel like they would do much of anything. Well, I mean, there's actually the principle makes sense because, again, what draws a lot of, what creates a lot of these weather patterns is conflict between hot and cold. So if you can destabilize it by adding or introducing more cold to it, it may make it hot, it may make it worse, may make it, may reduce it. But 80 pounds doesn't seem to, I can't imagine that doing jack diddly crap to a storm like that. Well, who knows?
Yeah. So the next one would be Project Cumulus, which was the British Royal Air Force between 49 and 52, included cloud seeding experiments over the south of England, and was allegedly responsible for the 1952 flood in the Devon village of Lynmouth, which resulted in 34 deaths, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah. In the 50s, the U.S. Forest Service carried out a project called Skyfire, in which they experimented with cloud seeding techniques to decrease lightning in order to reduce forest fires.
It would really help decrease forest fires is if we actually managed our resources better, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. Whatever.
Stupidness.
It's like why bother trying to change weather when we could just go and actually manage the forest appropriately? Just clear out all the underbrush, introduce better better life. Nature. Okay. Quick rant. Nature doesn't know what it's doing.
Yeah.
That's nature knows what it's doing. No, it doesn't. We as humans have the ability to go and properly manage forest. We get out of the undergrowth, and we can even plant new things, which allow for there to be better. It's not about balance. It's about optimizing the area. We've done this. There's plenty of forests, these smaller areas where people have gone out. They clear out these underbrushes. It prevents the fires. It actually promotes greater biodiversity, which is what we need. And people think, left to its own, nature will destroy itself in a lot of things. There are things we can do. Dude, you know what's terrible for trees? Elephants. They destroy trees. But my point is, instead of spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on something that will not work or may kind of work a little bit, we could spend a couple million and just, do things that actually promote biodiversity and prevent forest fires all at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And I'll go again to what Titan was talking about there. So that is actually true as far as HARP being able to control like
Oh yeah.
rain waves
Mhm.
and such. So like
Yeah.
they were saying that there was evidence. So it could be potentially overheating our brains that would like influence our moods and like how
Hmm.
we act and stuff. But there was evidence that HARP was used during uh, the Iraq War.
Hmm.
And this they were saying that it was believed to have been used to radiate electromagnetic waves like onto the battlefield, which was
Hmm.
kind of weird because there was this one instance where there was like a mass surrender, like during this like
Yes.
one battle or something like that.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
that.
so it was like they were saying that it was used to like control like emotions and like fear and all that kind of stuff. So they just kind of
Mhm.
gave up and they're just like, yeah, we're done. So
Yeah.
that actually is a thing.
Being outnumbered and outgunned is probably a good reason for that to have happened as well. But the idea though, right? Actually, I was talking to Ken about this. They did an entire episode on missing in Alaska on that very phenomenon because there were people when HARP was active would like zone out, like they would just and walk like this, like they would this like be in some sort of a trance-like state. People literally died and went missing because they thought it was HARP. The thing is, it wasn't affecting everybody, but it would affect a few people here and there. So again, I have our brains run on electromagnetic impulses, so I have no doubt that again we think about electromagnetic weapons, we EM weapons, we think about what I talked about, destroying a satellite or whatever. We have to remember a lot of this stuff can easily affect us as well, and that's just as effective a weapon. Like particularly with okay, lasers are probably the easiest thing. It's like everyone thinks, oh, it's going to be this big red beam and it's going to cut through you. No, it doesn't. It'll be invisible and it won't have to cut through you. They just have to cook your brain. And by cooking it, I mean raise it at like 30, 40 degrees and
Yeah.
you're dead. That's it. Or your heart. They just have to cook a very small part of your heart. You're dead. And that could take a fraction of a second. You would literally you'll never hear a shot.
Mhm.
You won't see it. There's no puff of smoke. There's no sound. There's just what looks like a big black baseball, like maybe the size of a softball, maybe a little bit larger. Maybe let's say basketball. Let's just make it that's on a tripod that's pointing somewhere. And the sniper, he's hiding down. He's got what looks like a PlayStation controller and a screen. That's it. He just points it where he wants it, pushes the button. Your heart is cooked. And here's the thing, you don't even need special skills for this. Every kid playing Overwatch right now could do this because it's a laser beam. It's a it's direct line of sight. You don't have to worry about wind. You don't have to worry about conditions. It's literally just point and click, and the person's dead. The same thing with microwave technology. They've got these new things they want to use for crowd dispersal.
Right.
And the first thing everyone freaked out about is, guys, if you miniaturize this and you put that in a room with a person, imagine what you could do to them. Like they flat out said, this technology is going to be used to torture people. We run electromagnetics. You could have, in fact, we talked about this on the channel a few months ago. There's this tower. Everyone thought it's disguised as a tree, but it's a tower, and no one knows
Yeah.
what it's for. But on
Mhm.
this one part of the highway, they have the most road rage of any place in the state. A
Yeah.
lot of people
I've seen
speculate
them.
it's some sort of electromagnetic event like that.
I've seen those. They're I traveled through like LA. They have a lot of them. They're like these giant towers with these weird
Hmm.
boxes on them, and like they're look like trees. They have like grass on them. You can still see like all the
Yeah.
stupid radars and stuff on them. And it's what they are is like they're called stingrays. I don't they that's the name I've heard before, but it's like they're fake like wireless internet, I guess like you call them, like fake towers. So like whenever you leave the airport, make sure you don't have Wi-Fi on or anything, or you don't use your phone as soon as you're leaving the airport, because you're switching from the airport internet over to a Stingray that catches traffic in between, and
Hmm.
that's where they kind of get your signal, and they're able to get to your into your
Oh
phone, read
wow.
your text messages and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
then you like transfer from that, which is like the middleman, onto your like carrier's network, like in between, but it has to hit that stupid Stingray like in between in order for them to be able to access your phone and stuff like that. And then you go over onto like your network. So like whenever I leave the airports, my phone's off until I get to like the
Hmm.
hotel or whatever, and then I flick it on and then it's fine. But that's kind of what that is. But it's also used in that manner because it's shooting off so many like electromagnetic waves, and it just hits people like crazy because it's
Yeah.
sending signals off in every which way. And
Yep.
it can cause like moodiness, or like you get angry for like no particular reason, or you're like
Right.
aggravated or something because it's screwing with your body. That's why they say not to use like wireless headphones,
Yeah.
because that electromagnetic wave is like hitting your brain, and who knows what it's doing to you. Obviously a lot of people
Mhm.
are getting brain cancer because of it, so
Well,
I
but
try to use like wired ones instead.
oh yeah. Well, plus Bluetooth never works for me. But it's so here's the thing. Again, it's like maybe brain cancer, maybe, but also just look at how mean people are.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that's really one of those things that I think isn't. I don't think we take into account in a lot of this stuff is people are just mean.
yeah,
Like
it's true.
it's like we've gotten meaner, and the more now again, is it psychological? I think that's definitely a part of it. You know, our media is designed to make us angry now. That's what it's designed for. It's what it's pumping out. But that being said, is it possible that the all of these electromagnetic frequencies are agitating us, changing? You know, again, it's affecting those neurons. Yeah, to say that's an impossibility, I think is ludicrous. And to think that these people wouldn't that it's like, well, but the government wouldn't do it if they knew it. Yes, they would. They'd finance it if they knew it could. If they knew it could, you know, if they knew it could make you somehow more controllable. Because remember, they don't control does not require you to be docile. They just need you pointed at the right area. In fact, it could be very useful for you
Yeah.
or for them if okay, that's an entirely different conversation. Point is, yeah, it may be that the entire weather manipulating thing is itself a cover, so we miss a little more something that's a little more obvious. Titan was talking about, you know, there because there again I remember this during the time there was this weird rash of bear attacks during the 90s in Alaska and in Canada where HARP was centered. And people were even saying, hey, maybe this big electromagnetic thing that they're working with is causing interruptions or is causing agitation, making them more aggressive. Again, it's like I remember that. I remember reading and feeling the stream, and it's because he's right, and it's you think that they wouldn't necessarily look at that and say, "Oh, I wonder what we could do with this."
Yeah, they wouldn't even have to be like you said, control. Like they wouldn't be trying to control people's emotions, or they would just kind of churn somebody in like a certain direction and just let them loose and go that way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's maybe aggravated a little bit more, a little more angry or something.
Hmm.
We'll just kind of tilt them this way and just let them go and see what happens, you know. So
There's
it would,
a did you ever see the movie The Losers?
yeah, yeah,
Uh, okay, it's funny, but it's also terrifying when you because I think it's probably truer than we'd like it to be. So the premise is it's actually based on on a DC comic. That's a whole thing. Um, they were making this weapon. Essentially, it was a the equivalent of a nuclear weapon, but it was more ecologically friendly because it used sound, right?
okay,
And the idea is that the bad guy is actually someone who works for the United States government, sort of a free agent. But what he's doing is he wants this weapon built because he's going to give it to terrorists. And they're like, why? He's like, well, he's like, what are they going to do with it? He goes, I don't know what they're going to do with it. And he's like, but what it will do, whatever they choose to do with it, will allow us to do what we want to do. He said it's like handing a loaded gun to an 8-year-old. You don't know how it's going to end, but you're pretty sure it's going to make the news. And that phrase is stuck in my head for years because he's 100% right. A lot of us, I think we have this idea that we like the government would have to sit there and control every aspect of something for it to be a fault. No, they just need to be like, let's make certain we don't arrest these guys, or let's make certain these people can make it into the country.
Yeah, so it happens all the time. Like they don't.
Mhm.
It's people think they like whenever they hear instances of like mass shootings or any kind of terrorist activity, and then you always hear stories afterwards about like the FBI had them on their radar and like they were
Yeah,
following them for months, and then people are like, "Well, how did they just
then
like not know this was going to happen?" They did know,
exactly,
like they did it on
they did.
purpose. They let that shit happen.
Yep.
Like they could have stopped them like weeks ago or whatever, but they just wanted to
Mhm.
see one
Well,
either they were funding it and they put it into play, or two they just wanted to see what they could benefit off of the aftermath. So
yeah,
it's
because they
not.
knew whatever they did would be something that they could. I don't want to get too far off field, but Magneticus has a great point on the Tide Pod thing. That's something I talked about on air. Was the whole Tide Pod thing was actually a meme. No one was doing it. No one was doing it. It was all photoshopped stuff. It was a meme. It was funny. That's all it was. Then the news media got a hold of it. Now, is it possible that the people who run the news are too stupid to understand what a meme is? Yes. However, a more likely situation is they they recognize it for what it is, but realize, well, we need something to scare people with. And what's going to scare parents more than, hey, your kids could be doing this. And because they put it out there, because they popularized this idea, people started doing it. They weren't That's the word, like they weren't doing it when it was a meme. They did it once the news media started talking about it.
Some of the more notable ones was that whole thing. I don't know if it was happening around the country, but remember that weird trend where like people were going to grocery stores and licking the freaking Bluebell ice cream? They were
Yes,
like opening it.
every single person who did that needs to be beaten within an inch of their lives, rehabilitated, and beaten again.
So that was one of them. And then
Mhm.
now you had that one where the people were lighting themselves on fires, like in the bathrooms or like in
Yes.
the showers. And then the people that
Yes.
now are cooking chicken with NyQuil. That was another stupid one. And then where kids were licking toilet bowls. That was another
Mhm.
stupid ass one. And it's just like, come on, people
Yep.
like it's not by accident, but whatever. But
Yep.
it's definitely weird. I mean,
Mhm.
just run through these quick last few here, just so everybody
Yeah, yeah,
kind of
please,
gets an
please.
idea of kind of like the experiments done throughout the years. Let's see, there was so that last one we finished was Skyfire, where they were trying
Yeah.
to reduce electricity and lightning strikes.
Mhm.
Project Storm Fury from 62 to 83 was the government trying to disrupt the inner structure of hurricanes in the Atlantic by flying aircraft into them and seeding them with silver iodide.
Oh,
Um,
gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
Yeah,
was
I
that
heard
one.
about that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that has like flying a plane into like seems like a bad idea, but I get they go over and then they see it in the end. I've heard about that one. Yeah.
Multiple countries, including the U.S., were modifying weather in November of '97. Wall Street Journal reported that in order to dissipate excess fog, the Malaysian
Mhm.
government would be signing an agreement with Russia at the time, officials for use of technology which would allow them to create a cyclone. That's stupid. The
Yeah.
state-run Oklahoma weather modification program. Stupid Oklahoma. It's a good thing Texas crushed them in the Cotton Bowl. I was there for that, thank God. Um, State-run Oklahoma weather modification program conducts cloud seeding operations in Oklahoma to enhance the development of rain showers. And why would you do that? It's like in the heart of Tornado Alley, and you want to
Yeah.
be screwing with the weather still. Like, why would you do that shit? That's dumb. But it's Oklahoma, so what?
Yeah. I've never expected much out of an
Much.
Oklahoman.
In October of '05, Business Week reported that China, Russia, and Mexico were modifying the weather, with China spending about 40 million a year on weather management programs, which is still going on today. Uh, since the early 1960s, weather modification incorporated of Fargo, North Dakota, has offered a professional weather modification service to insurance companies. Whoa, to insurance companies,
Say what?
uh, water resource management groups, and federal and state government research organizations. They specialize in weather modification, cloud seeding, rain enhancement, and fog. I would think that'd be a major conflict of interest. If you're offering weather modification technology to insurance companies, uh, okay,
Well,
that's
I could see them wanting to lessen the power of a storm, right? And again, we tend to forget what all is insured. I mean, so if they can make a storm less powerful, I think they would probably relish that idea. Particularly in Texas, if we can get fewer hailstorms, it means they have to pay less out. Um, or even along the lines of, again, stopping droughts, because that ties into a whole bunch of other industries. So I could see them wanting it. But and again, it goes back to, we know they do it, right? We know that they're on the smaller scale. I think the thing is, when we think of weather modification, we think of, again, someone pushing a button and a tornado appearing out of nowhere and assassinating the prime minister of Uruguay or something.
they try to. Who was it that they tried to do that with lately? Or like, I think a few months back, they were trying to assassinate one of the vice presidents of one of those South
Hmm.
American countries like that. They tried to
Yeah,
shoot her in the face, and it didn't like the gun misfired. I was like, holy shit.
yeah. It's like, if
uh,
you're gonna try and kill somebody, at least bring a working weapon.
that was wild. I saw the video. I actually have the video of that. I find it somewhere. But this is like the main one that was really I really caught my eye. So a Russian company called Elate Intelligent Technologies Incorporated offered a professional weather modification service using directed energy since at least 1992. The unit consists of a power supply, which provides current to a series of antennas that focus on electrical charge into the air. The unit is connected to a computer and can tailor weather patterns over a distance of about 200 miles. So
Well, if it's
that's
from Russia, we know it's legit.
we go to Russia for everything, even like rockets, and we can't even get to space without them, which is dumb.
Yeah, yes. Don't even get me started on. Don't get me started on our space program.
Yeah, that's
So
wild. But
disappointed.
just the fact that they would even have any kind of weapons or technology that we would need lets you know that we don't really think of them as the bad guy in this whole thing. It's just a big scam.
Oh, it is. No, it is. Yeah, yeah, no, it is. Again, that's an entire, that's an entire episode. But I'll say this. Yes, I do think that if Trump was in, he wouldn't have invaded, partly because, yeah, Trump would have actually done something. Yes. However, I also think it's because this was a planned deal, and this is nothing more than just a big money scam. This is, yeah, this is about, it's about money and about power, and it's not necessarily, and this has all been planned out. This was negotiated during Obama. This was
Yeah,
supposed to have happened under Hillary, and when that didn't happen, everyone's like, "Oh, whoa, what just happened?" So
yeah, it's wild.
once the curtain zombie made it into office, they're like, "Oh, good, things are back on."
And they said, "Oh, the adults are back in power." I was like, "Really,
Yeah,
really?" Yeah,
yeah,
but I think it was. So Arlene was mentioning, is there any journalists that can be trusted? Yeah, there's a bunch of them, but the
ish.
problem with that is that even if you try to do your job correctly, you have this journalist that went missing like a week ago.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be talking about him. I had a guest on last week. So we're talking about Michael Hastings and how he disappeared,
Hmm.
or like he was killed, or like how he died. Um, but as soon as that episode was done, like this whole thing happened, and now there was another guy that was James Gordon Meek, was a journalist that worked for New York Times or something like that.
Yeah.
He was writing a book about like Obama and Biden and all that stuff, and
Well,
he was
it
he was
was
rated.
specifically, he was looking into, at least according to the friends, he was looking into the pullout of Afghanistan,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
the
yeah, that's right.
FBI raids him, and then he goes missing. Hmm.
Yeah, so that's a whole another one. So like we'll be talking about that with
Yeah.
him on Tuesday of next week, because he's quick on the trigger. He wrote a book about that already, like a little like 100-page book that he sent me and stuff. So he's a real good author, and he digs deep into that kind of stuff quick. It was only like a week after he messaged me about it that he had like a whole book up and running, and so
Wow.
it's definitely, I got to read through it this weekend. But so if anybody's interested in that, we'll have that next week. I think Tuesday is what we're looking at, but if not, we'll let everybody else know what's happening. So yeah, he got raided, and then now he's just missing in action. So
Yep.
not even a body or anything. So it's just weird. I mean,
Well, it makes you wonder how often that actually happens.
true. You don't
Because
really
he,
hear about it. So
yeah, well, I mean, he was one of the, I think the problem was he was a more well-known producer, right?
right.
That's why this got it. And the thing is, it took 3 months before anyone knew this had even happened. I mean, Veritas, I mean, they get raided all the time. I can never remember his name, the guy who runs Veritas. He's been thrown in jail numerous times.
James O'Keefe. Yeah.
James O'Keefe. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like this stuff happens a lot. Again, this is one of those things that goes back to, can they be trusted? Well, it no, but also there is good information out there. That's the thing, is the problem is the goods out there. It's mixed in with the bad, and that's because they can't control everything, but what they can control are broader narratives. It's like, hey, look at this over here, and you miss the obvious.
Yeah. It's wild, man. I guess it just depends on how close you get and what you plan on doing with the information. I'm sure there's like reporters or
Mhm.
journalists that know a lot of stuff, but those people know that they would never say anything, or like it
Yeah,
benefits them. So it's whatever. But
because they're in on it.
yeah.
They essentially they aid and abet these things because it makes them part of the crowd.
Who was the actress that died a couple months back, like in a car crash, supposedly in
Oh,
LA?
yeah,
Was she
Anne Heche.
doing? She was
Anne
doing
Heche.
some kind of like a documentary on
Yeah,
pedophiles
she
or something
was.
as well. It
Yeah,
seemed it's interesting
it
that
was. Yeah,
all
she was.
these people that, like Paul Walker was one of them. The guy from that band, Linkin Park, what was his name?
Yeah.
He died as
Oh,
well.
Chester Bennington.
Chester. They were all like, I don't know if they're working together, but I know Chester Bennington and a couple
Yeah.
other people that were like in Hollywood or somebody. They were putting together like another documentary about it, and then they both died or something like that.
Yeah.
And now she's dead. I have video of the crash, and they were taking her in the ambulance. She was still alive when she was put in the ambulance. I have the video of it. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden they were saying that she died in the crash and all the stuff. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, again, car crashes. Okay, it's silly, but did you ever see the Josie and the Pussycats movie they did years ago?
I think so.
Okay, it is. I hate that I love it as much as I do. Um, but there's the scene where it's towards the end, and they're like, "Do you ever wonder why all of these, um, these musicians die in plane crashes or have religious experiences and disappear? It's because we brainwash them, and if they go off, we use their music to sell products, and if they go off track, we just get them out of the way. We bring in the new act. In fact, it opens with the guy who played Nightcrawler. He's managing this boy band, and they're saying, "Hey, we were just listening to the music. We noticed this really weird thing." And basically, it was the whole backmasking thing. He goes,
Mm.
"That's that's very interesting, guys. I'll get right on that." He he turns around. Again, they're on this private jet. He turns around. And he goes, uh, "Chevy to the levee." He grabs a parachute and jumps out of the plane, and the plane just goes down.
Jeez.
It's over the top. It's silly, but it's like, what if that's actually not so far from what we think it is, and not the backmasking, mind control thing? Because again, maybe that's the distraction. We are influenced way more than we realize. Mind
Right.
again, that's what we were talking about. Again, talking about this on the channel a few weeks ago. MK Ultra never stopped. All of those psychiatrists went in, they left and went into these universities and ran their experiments there. And it's and that technology and the things they learn and how to manipulate you, it's in every phone. It's in every advertising firm. It's in every computer game. They know
Yeah.
how to make certain you spend money the right way and do
Yeah.
what they want. Like this is again, it goes back to, They give you something flashy like backmasking. Oh, here's the sexy thing. No, it's the fact that they only put out certain artists.
Yep.
They promote certain things as a unit. That's the problem. And so it changes the culture. They can't control you through backmasking or whatever, but they can control a broader swath of the culture so that everyone's going again. One of the weirdest things and makes you really go, huh, is Jim Morrison's father, Jim Morrison, the guy who is literally the leading man for the psychedelic movement. His father was overseeing the Gulf of Tonkin incident. You're like, whoa, stop right there.
Like an
That's too
admiral.
much. Yeah, yeah, he was that he over it's like that's too much of a coincidence to deny that. It's because the people who make it big and how many rappers and other artists have come out and said, "You wanna sell" it's like, "Hey, you're doing well. You wanna sell a couple million copies and you wanna go double platinum. You do this, we're gonna get you doing these things, but to walk through that door, you gotta compromise yourself." And how many people have said that? I think we need to take that way more seriously.
Yeah, it's so like to that point. I mean, I think I've mentioned it before, but um, there's a great book by a gentleman called John Potash. I actually had him on the show very early on, and the name of the book is called "Drugs as Weapons Against Us."
Mhm,
The CIA's murderous targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendricks, Lenin, and a whole bunch of other people.
mhm,
And he specifically talks about how the CIA handlers were drugging these guys into like creating movements and like
mhm.
I guess protesting against certain things here and there, blah blah blah. And then once they tried to like wake up, once like Hendrix started trying to get sober and all that stuff, they
Yeah,
had him killed, stuff like that. And same thing with like Tupac, Kurt Cobain, and John Lennon, and all these guys. I actually had him on the show, which was episode 12. For anybody who's interested in that show, can go back in the archive and look at that show. He explained everything. I think he even had a movie on Amazon Prime. If it's still on there, I think that's where I saw it. If you guys want to watch that as well, that's like, he goes into like Lennon and like Paul McCartney and all these guys and like how they were being controlled with drugs, like how the Beatles got like tricked into taking drugs one night when they were like at
yep,
a dinner with somebody and they
mhm,
had like LSD like slipped in their coffee and stuff, and then from then on like they just went and did all kinds of crazy shit after that. So it was like a real crazy story. I have his book and all that kind of stuff. It's a
mhm.
great book. That's like a whole crazy like rabbit hole to go into. It's
Yep.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, and again, it goes back to it just to bring it back to the question of weather manipulation. Again, does it happen? Yeah. Is it the way it's portrayed in movies? No.
Yeah.
But what if the weather manipulation is the distraction from the more obvious fact that these are just electromagnetic weapons that's being worked on? That's maybe it's being used on us every single day. And
Yeah.
we don't realize it. It makes us hungry. It makes us angry. So we buy more bullcrap food so that we can, so that we kill ourselves that way. Makes us angrier, so we don't think about things the way we should. Maybe it's an electromagnetic weapon that can also be used to take satellites out without actually having to send something. Maybe they can, it just seems like when you stop and just say, okay, well, hold on. What if what's promoted is the crazy stuff to distract us from the obvious? Again, like David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear. He didn't make anything disappear. He just moved the camera. And
Yeah.
everyone who's supposed to be keeping him honest is in on it. Just like our all of our news media is supposed to keep everyone honest, and the ones who do disappear. The ones who get paid lots of money to spout nonsense, they have all these wonderful careers, they're in on it.
Yeah. It's weird. I mean, going to that point, like I think early on when Harp was being built out, there was it wasn't based off of it was based off of another patent that was supposed to be used for transmitting subliminal messages to over
Mhm.
the radio and stuff like that. So this was been like early on, like in the oof, what was it like 50, 60, something like that? I don't remember
I think
exactly what it was, but like that was like the whole basis for this like harp. Like they were supposed to send subliminal messages. That's what the patent stated. I haven't seen it like all the way through. I've seen pictures of the patent. I don't know
yeah.
if you can like find it still. I have to figure out what it is, but
Right. Well,
there,
it was about using the ionosphere to, because okay, we got to remember back, before satellites, right?
mm,
Radio communication was all there was. So it's like, how do you get particularly a secret communication from the U.S. to somewhere in Russia or China or whatever, right? So that's what HARP was. Again, the thing that HARP was based on was trying to do that, was take and use the ionosphere to move this radio signal, or again, another type of signal further than a radio signal can go. That's how AM works. It bounces off the ionosphere and comes back down. That's why FM just goes out, which is why it's so limited. It's limited by the curvature of the Earth, whereas AM can reach out. Like I was listening to 820. I was driving back from Arizona one time. I could at night you could hear 820 from Dallas
mm.
in Arizona and New Mexico, because particularly at night, again, it's bouncing off the ionosphere. Well, that's what they were trying to do with the original version of HARP. But maybe they found some other use for it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm reading here. It was the patent wanted to be able to insert subliminal messages into TV and radio waves without the listener or viewer ever
Mhm.
knowing. Considering what we have learned about harp, so yeah, when harp was built, like in the '90s or early '90s, I mean,
Yep.
who knows if it's? I'm sure it's still being used for that in some way or another, but
Yep.
it's
Well,
just one.
Magneticus is pointing out voice to skull. This is something that's like the whole Project Bluebeam thing. That's another thing that scares me, because you think you're hearing something in your head,
You actually are.
and you are, but it's not because you're having some sort of transcendental communications, because some dude has technology to broadcast that into your skull and you can hear it, because the bones in your eardrums. I mean, the whole Project Bluebeam thing is freaky enough, but
That's an actual um, viable technology. Like in the military, they have like skull radios, like where you put it like on your jaw, or like it has to be hitting some kind of like bony area, like in your
yeah,
face, and you can hear what the vibrations like speaking inside your head and not through your ears, which is weird. Like they have like
yeah,
these microphones and they put them like it's real
yeah.
crazy stuff, but it's an actual thing. Like
Oh, it is. Yeah,
and
bone conductive audio devices. Yeah, no, that's insane. It really is. But now that you can do it at a distance, and we keep forgetting, like the people who kept having this weird um illnesses in Cuba, in our Cuban embassy, and a few others, where people are like, this is some kind of weapon. It's either sonic or EM, but they were having these weird attacks.
it's weird because it's like it makes you wonder if it can be used. I mean, I'm sure it can, like long, I guess like long wave kind of thing where it can be directed at like one person. So like you have that
Mhm.
thing where you remember that guy Isaac Cappy who killed himself in Arizona and
Yeah,
said that he was hearing voices in his head for like days and days, and then he finally jumped off the highway and he got hit by a car and all that kind of stuff. But that would be the kind of like the same thing where like
hmm,
these guys are being targeted for whatever they know. They have information concerning blah 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 XYZ, some guy in the government or like a famous actor or whatever, and they're
hmm,
deliberately hitting them with these things, driving them crazy, making them sound crazy. Because at the time of his death, he was telling everybody like I can hear them in my head, and like he was like talking to people, and like and then he just had to kill himself because he just couldn't handle it anymore. So
yeah,
um, it's definitely wild, but it's not. I don't. I don't. Whenever somebody tells me something that would be considered like a conspiracy of any kind involving the government, like I don't automatically shut it down. Like there's
yeah,
people that you talk to and they're just like, oh, the government would never do that to us. It's like really.
yeah. They have. Ow, that's hotter than it should be. They have. No, they would. Yes, they would. They have, and they already have. I mean, just there is literally nothing. The only conspiracy theory I dismiss out of hand is that the government is competent.
Yeah,
That's the only conspiracy theory I don't buy. Everything else, it's like I will never reject it because there is nothing more evil than any government. It's not the United. It's all of them. They to be there. You are basically already a psycho,
Yeah,
just straight up.
you have to be. It's unfortunate. I mean, I'm sure some people go in there with the intent of like trying to do good, whatever that looks like on their end. But like, you just
Hmm.
the game is so far stacked against somebody running for office that you just have to stoop lower than what's already there to even make it in. And by that
Yeah.
point, like you're screwed already. You just have to keep going, like So
Well, to get the real power, well, it's to get. I think this is the bigger problem because again, they can't control everything, but what they can do is they make certain that the people who will play ball make it into power.
right,
It doesn't mean someone again, it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be someone who pops up who can do it, but they just make certain that that person's life is a living hell until they can get somebody in who will play ball, someone who they've groomed over years and sort of helped along the way.
yeah, and like the best kind of example I can think of that is before this latest pope came in. Who was the pope before him that they kind of overthrew
Mm,
him? And he lives in the Vatican still. He can never leave
yeah,
until he dies. But man,
yeah, Ratzenberger.
yeah. So like
But that
he
wasn't
like
his Pope name, but that was his real name.
they didn't like him, and so they just kind of overthrew his whole thing, and he's just stuck there now. So
Hmm.
sorry for him, but not really. But either way, it's rough. But I don't know. I think we kind of covered enough as to I didn't really know too much about specific examples and stuff, but it was just wild kind of
Hmm.
looking up stories and like examples, and there was a whole shit ton of like actual examples of them
Yeah,
trying to do this kind of stuff in the past, which is weird, like the forest services and these clowns out in Oklahoma trying to manipulate the weather. And I was just it was a
yep.
lot more widespread than I thought it would be, especially like early on, like in the 50s and 60s, especially like in
Oh yeah.
Vietnam and stuff. So it's wild. I mean,
Oh,
it's
it is.
the latest stuff in Dubai and now this latest thing in China. Like, so here's one more, I guess. Do
Hmm.
you believe in chemtrails, and would this be related in some way? Because I know in China right now they're deploying seeding planes
Right.
because of like the heat wave and stuff. So they're trying to
Yeah.
make it rain. But like I would think that chemtrails would be kind of related somehow. What do you think? No?
Well, okay. Uh, yes, actually, it was Pope Benedict. Thank you, Arlene.
Right.
I could not remember his official Pope name because they all take their own little names. um, it's I love how you phrase that question because it's a very Jasonian way of asking that question. Um, do I do I believe in chemtrails? Yes and no. I it's I think people do look at what's very clearly just the contrail, from that's and like see that's evidence of it. No, do they? But is a chemtrail kind of a real thing? Yeah, I mean they are. The question is, what are they really there for? Right? When it again any large popular conspiracy, I've really gotten to the point of thinking, okay, never discount it. But what is this? If this is in popular media, what is it they're actually trying to hide?
Right.
Again, it's the flashy thing around the reality of it. Dude, we know they do particulate tests on us all the time without our knowledge.
Hmm.
Smart dust, uh, different types of chemicals in the air to track things. So I mean, again, you know,
It's rough, I know.
yeah.
It's kind
Well, again, it's like you know what? I don't have any reason. I don't have any specific knowledge myself on any of it. So it's like the thing is, I think a lot of people, because it's as big as it is. I think I think that's a cover for probably something that they are doing that is. What's worse is it may not even be overly nefarious. It may just be careless. Like they may just be like, well, let's just see what happens when we drop this out of a plane. And you're like, because they chemical biological warfare, that's a real thing.
Right.
So it does, again, does it have something to do with weather manipulation? I'm certain that's what cloud seeding is, right?
Right.
But again, I think a lot of this stuff is cover for what they're really, really doing. And often it's just experiment. Again, the worst part is they may just be experimenting on us just to see how stuff works. And that may be like the most, like, it's not even, they're like, well, let's see if we can turn everyone into a lizard. Thank you, Amazing Spider-Man. It may just be like, let's see what happens when we release this particle over a major metropolitan area. Let's see if we can track and see how many people theoretically would die because we can see where the dust particles go.
Like when they were injecting syphilis into people and just all kinds of crazy, when they were testing vaccines on people and all kinds of crazy ass crap. It's
You want to, okay, look into the atomic soldiers. You want something that's really nuts? The atomic soldiers. That is the most insane thing you'll ever read. And the stuff, what they did around people who, were exposed to high amounts of radiation, and it is insane. Like, please understand, we deal with some really, really evil people. And the worst part is they're not evil as in malicious. They're evil as in, well, let's just do this for science. The words for science should scare everybody, because that is used to justify it's been used to justify all kinds of evil over the last 100 years.
When they say trust the science, you should not trust all the science.
You should not trust anybody, particularly if there's a government and if there's government involvement.
Yeah, I was trying to find, and I knew I was going to bring that up about the chemtrails before the show even started. And I had like a collage of pictures with like chemtrail pilots and like machinery set up and jets and all kinds of stuff. And I just remembered about it now when I said it, and I can't find the pictures now. So I'll have to like put them up somewhere on social media. If you guys want to see them, I'll put them like on my Twitter or like Instagram or something on the second page. But I'll send them to you personally after this. But for everybody else that wants to see them, I have a whole collage of pictures where there's chemtrail pilots like flying these planes, and they show pictures of the insides with like schematics, and like one of the pilots is sitting there in front, and he has a patch on his flight suit, and they zoom in on it, and it says spray and pray, and it has like a switch on it and stuff. So it's like what? So
like I said, that's why I do think there is something to that. And Magnetic actually has a great point about blocking or disrupting satellite imaging, and we don't know. Again, I go back to the real question is the why, right? Like I said, it feels like a lot of the conspiracy theories designed to distract us from what they're really doing, and maybe things are just they aren't what we think they are. Right. And again, what can they really be? We don't know. No one's actually come out and told us, but could be something as simple, to his point. Could just be, hey, we know that certain satellites are over. We don't want them to see certain things. So we're going to throw this out here, and it's like spraying that clear coat on your license so that the screen doesn't catch it, right?
Yeah,
because it reflects back. It's like stuff like that's real. So it's like they could be like, hey, we're just gonna put this over, make certain that some other government isn't seeing something.
Yeah, it's all definitely within the realm of possibility. Somehow it's wild. I don't know, but it's definitely interesting to kind of look at it. But yeah, that one has always been a weird one for me as far as chemtrails. It's crazy how many people are divided on it. Like a lot of people really believe in it, and a lot of people are like outright saying no, and it's never like in between. You never really find anybody that's like, well, yeah, I mean, it could be like this and this, but I don't believe it's that, so it's like either you believe it or you don't. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
it's either or.
Yeah, it's like I again, to say no to something means you have to have actual operational knowledge of all of it, and I don't. So now you give me, again, if you can give me a good argument, I can say, okay, well then your theory shows that perhaps it is that's a small, the logic is good. Okay, but I'll never rule it out entirely because I don't have operational knowledge.
Yeah. Yep. It's wild. It's I'll have to find those pictures now. I'm like scrambling to find them, but I'll find them so everybody can look
You,
at them.
you can put them on social media later.
Damn, I knew I should have. I even thought about it before we started. Damn you. Anyways, yeah. So that was definitely interesting. I mean, we'll have to have one. I know I like this, the one from Titan here. This will definitely be a show in the future. So we'll have to get back together for that one, maybe and take a look at
Yep.
it. So
Yeah.
great ideas. Yeah, everybody, if you guys have any other kind of crazy topics we can discuss, like shoot them down here in the show notes after the show or whatever. You can always email them to us as well, or like on social media. You can even send them over to Jason as well. We'll figure everything out and see what we can do there. But
I'll steal them from my show.
there you go. Yeah, we'll see what's going on. Yeah, good sir. I appreciate it. I guess pretty much everybody that's on here already knows where to find you. But for everybody else,
Yeah.
when this show goes back up edited, can you let them know where they can find your shows and what you guys going on in the week?
Yeah. Again, we've got, you go over to Texas Front Porch. I mean, links to everything is at sirupapers.com. You know, it's a one-stop shop. I need to update that actually now that I'm on Untold Radio AM. But yeah, you can find me Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays on Texas Front Porch. That's TEX' Front Porch. On Mondays I'm with Tex. Tuesdays I'm actually on Untold Radio AM with Dean Bertram on Mysterious Library. But Wednesdays and Thursdays it's me and Rob. We question everything on Wednesday, and Thursdays things tend to get a little more spiritual with the Siru Papers. But I'm always around. Like I said, worst case scenario, if you've not heard of us, sirupapers.com. It's the website. Links to everything.
Yeah. Links to everything below as well in the show notes. So everybody can just click on over. We have everything linked down below when the show goes back up edited. So I do take this down after we finish going live, edit the videos and stuff, and then toss them back up because we are everywhere as well. So that'll be probably tomorrow morning. We'll have everything set up. So that'll be good to go. Sir, I appreciate you sacrificing your Friday to hang with us and talk about some interesting stuff, I guess. But really appreciate, as always, you hopping on and giving us some fresh perspectives on whatever we kind of dive into.
I love hanging with you, Paul. It's a great show. Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody, appreciate you guys as well. Everybody in the comment section as well. Thanks for throwing ideas out there. There's some stuff out there that I didn't really think of as well. So I appreciate you guys. Yeah, if you guys aren't already subscribers to the show, you guys know what to do. Hit that subscribe button down below, as well as that like button. That really helps out with the algorithms moving forward. You can also hit that bell icon so you guys don't miss any episodes in the future, whether that be when we go live or when we toss out our high strangeness episode series. You can find those as well. If you guys are on the go and you want to check us out, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio and Amazon Music at Truth Defender Podcast. Yeah, if you guys like what we do, you can share the link with a friend, family member, or colleague. Just keep it kind of quiet at work. We don't want to get you in too much trouble. I wouldn't be going to advertising.
You will get into trouble.
Yeah, I don't want you guys advertising the crazy shit that we do on here. I don't want people to look at you kind of weird. That's all right. If you guys feel comfortable with that, shoot it out there. Like I mentioned, if you guys have any questions for myself or a guest, as well as topic or guest recommendations, you can shoot us an email at thetruthDefender1776 at gmail.com. You guys keep out on Twitter or Instagram for those pictures I'm going to be sending out to you guys and any other kind of show information as well. I'll have our Linktree link down below as well. That's the main link to all of our shows, Rumble and wherever else we go up. We go up on Spotify and all that stuff. So that'll be like the main links. You can catch all the stuff we got going on. Appreciate everybody. Everybody have a great weekend. I know it was raining pretty hard down here in Texas right now where I'm at. Thunderstorms all day. So that was pretty crazy. Yeah. Accidents like crazy because nobody in Dallas knows how to drive when it rains. Go figure.
Not a one.
So yeah, everybody stay safe out there, stay blessed, and most of all, stay frosty, everybody.
Perfect.